One of our topics on our blog is video game recommendations, and it was published December 29th, 2022, last year, if you're watching this today. Now, when we came up with the list of video games that we recommend, they are based on the results and what we see on the clinic. That's one thing to keep in mind of. The other thing is that our recommendation, our perspective on what games we recommend, they come with a purpose and how we have used them to motivate a child to engage in a desired activity. It could be doing homework, sharing, turn taking, reading. It all depends. So we're not just looking at the fun aspect of a game that you would see in a typical review, which might include it has phenomenal graphics, it's fun, and it has an adventure. We're not really looking at that. We're mainly looking at what can we use this fun entertainment system and use it to motivate the child to engage in something much more positive. And one of the games that we recommended early on is Osmos. Osmos is the most PG game that we have seen. It's mainly for motor coordination, and it's completely different using Osmos through a controller than through a touchscreen experience, because the child now has to learn how to use their thumbs to navigate the little ball, move it, absorb another ball. And for that purpose, it's phenomenal. It has a nice, relaxing soundtrack. Content-wise, I don't see any parents freaking out over that game. So for that purpose, just getting the child to use a different medium to interact with the screen as opposed to touchscreen, great. Really, really like this one. And most of the time, we're usually working with children with special needs. So obviously, Osmos, special needs, difficulty with motor coordination, great game. And it's exciting to use. The next one that we recommended on our list is Cuphead. Now, this game is fun. I'm not gonna lie. This one is fun. It's very enjoyable game. But what we really liked about it was the very beginning of the game, that it had a little nice story to go along with it. And then as you interact with the little NPCs, the little characters that you find, like the strawberry that we have in the picture of the screenshot that we took while playing the game, which says, "Hey guys, good to see you again." That's a prompt for the child to read. So what we would do is that we would pause the game, get control by having the control in our hands, and before the child could play, we would prompt them to read what the strawberry was saying or read the story at the very beginning. Because if the child wanted to play, the child had to read, not just engage with the fun aspect of the game. And it's a nice little interaction. They have fun, they read a little, they have fun, they read a little, and it keeps motivation up. So it was, in that aspect, really, really good. The next one on our list is Stray. Now, the Stray video game is this little cat that's basically you're controlling, running around, exploring. It's very, very fun game. It's much more time consuming in terms of therapy wise. However, for the right child that likes to explore, move around, see how they interact with the environment, this game was surprisingly, we found it to be rather PG. It has a little bit of mixed actions, enjoyable, I would say, as they interacted with the environment, and at the same time, there's little prompts that come up that they have to read and interact. So we would ask the child to stop, read, not just quickly press the buttons, get away with it and keep exploring, because that defeats the whole purpose of using the game as a medium to encourage reading and they had no problem with exploration. With solving puzzles, yes, because now they had to recall what they read and put those pieces together. So when it comes to reading comprehension, some children do have difficulty with that aspect. So the puzzles where you have to read something, remember what you did, go back and figure it out, those are a little bit tricky and difficult. Some of them are a lot more easier, but that's just the idea, to get them to recall, to remember what they read, and all of those aspects go into using the game as a medium to encourage positive behaviors and reading. And the last one on the list we added Elden Ring, which that game is specifically for, I would say at most 15 plus. 15 plus, you're basically looking at children that are most likely in high school and they are already exposed to some of the atrocities that happened during the Holocaust. So the content is somewhat in line. Now, Elden Ring is not about a Holocaust or anything, but it does have graphical content that as a parent they should be concerned about. And it's better to be aware, like if you see giants or people hanging, being burnt, rats chasing you to kill you, giant rats, like New York City rats, overfed too. Yeah, it has a lot of graphical things that maybe you don't want a little young child, like a 5-year-old, exposed to. Now, at the same time, with Elden Ring, it literally had everything that, from a therapy perspective, that we wanted. It had story, reading, exploration, strategy, patience, frustration. Yes, that game is frustrating. It had everything that we wanted to teach a valuable skill, but not suitable for kids, like really young kids. Lowest we were willing to go is 15, like I said, 15 plus. And at the same time, we as a clinic are not the ones that determine video game appropriateness. We put our recommendation and let the parents know, and then they decide themselves, is this okay for my child? Can they be exposed to this? If they say yes, okay, no problem. If they say no, sorry, you cannot play that game. Not parent approved. And like I said, Elden Ring, the game of the year, AAA title, high budget, amazing soundtrack. It has literally, like I said, everything that even a young child would be looking forward to, like riding a horse, being a knight, strong and powerful. It's very motivational to play such a fun game, but not appropriate for a young child. Now, any questions?
I have one. So Carlos, what is your favorite video game? Like ultimate favorite?
My ultimate favorite is not really on this list. And I will say it's Donkey Kong Country 2 because I played that game so much as a child. And sometimes I like to bring out that game for turn taking because that game had a natural aspect to it. And I'm just recalling back all the fun times I've had with it, with sharing with siblings and even with friends, that you would take your turn. If you died, well, now it's your buddy's turn. And then if they would die, then it's your turn. So you really had no control over that. Or then the one that irritated everyone the most was the one where you were cooperating. And in that one, if you let your friend play, then, oh, he was definitely playing and you were not. So it brings back really fun times and fun memories. And for therapy, when it involves teaching children to take turns, Donkey Kong Country 2 or even Donkey Kong Country 1, I guess number 3 as well, are really, really good games for that, learning to share. Take your turn, relax. okay, phenomenal.
Okay, so in these games, though, do you recommend playing with multiple people or all alone?
Oh, no, no, no. For the games that we recommend, we always recommend to have a parent to be part of the game and be a supervisor. And the reason being is that you don't want the child playing all alone. Now, when I mention games like Donkey Kong Country, obviously you don't really need that much reading to play that game. But other games like Zelda, Link to the Past, which I played in, when I was a child, you do need some reading to understand what's going on. But when I was a child, I did not speak a word of English, and I managed to beat that game without speaking a word of English. So if you leave a child unsupervised, it defeats the purpose. And since we use it for therapy and to motivate reading, hear their voice. Like when the game prompts you, what's your name, or this is what happened, go to the castle. You want to hear the child's voice to make sure that they're actually reading it and not telling you, oh, I just read it mentally. No, no, they didn't.
So I also was wondering if you knew what like the hottest game on the market is right now, or
Well, right now I would definitely say Elden Ring. I mean, it's been nominated AAA title, a lot of game awards. Stray has also gotten game awards, but I would not, when it comes to selecting a video game, I would not always go for the AAA title. Your child might be like, oh, I want this, I want this. Just first, I would recommend watch some YouTube videos on it and get a perspective of what that game really is, because you may not know. And the reason being is that when you go to a web page and you look it up a video game and what they recommend, most of it is just a fun aspect of it. Game reviews, oh, this game has phenomenal graphics, it looks amazing, but that doesn't do anything for me from a therapeutic perspective. What does something for me is experiencing the game myself, playing through it, and as I play through it or have an idea of what's going on, I start thinking, how can I use this title that came out? And how can I use it to benefit my child? Obviously, you want to make sure that your child is supervised and you set limits to game time as well, because then they're not going to do their homework. And then decide, can it be used as a bare minimum, a tool to motivate the child to do something more positive that you may want. Maybe you want them to do their chores, clean up their room, do their homework, whatever it might be. Before they play the video game, they should do what's most important for them.
okay, so I know you touched on this briefly, but with Elden Ring, in the rating, there's a part where you stated that there were inappropriate parts such as grafting of body parts.
So yes.
Do you believe that 15 is still too young for such images?
So my reason being for it is that as you're running around the game, you may not notice it. You kind of see it, but it's not that well displayed on it. Like you don't see anyone, taking other people's body parts and attaching it to themselves. They're already on the character. So you really don't see that. I mean, it's still on display. And once you're really exploring, looking at all that you see, then you can pick up on cues and other things that you didn't notice before because you were probably looking for something else.
So are you saying it's less gore and more imagery?
Oh, definitely less gore and more imagery. You can tone down some of the settings, like how much blood you see, but the action's still there. Like when you get behind a soldier and you do a backstab, you literally drive your dagger or your sword, whatever you have through the person, which it can look brutal. So it really depends on the parent and what they think is best. But That's why it's so important for parents to know precisely what to expect.
Okay, and so I was looking through the video games and I was trying to figure out what systems would be best for the game itself or what systems they're even available on. Do you think in the future you will be including that in your rating?
Well, we have a really strong bias on this, and I mean, it's really strong. So, from therapy perspective, it's literally impossible for us to carry every gaming system on the market, like a PS4, an Xbox, a Nintendo Switch. It's just not practical. But on the Steam Deck, we're capable of emulating content that we own. Now, I don't want to call it content, more like video games that we have purchased, and emulate some of the classic titles like Donkey Kong Country. Some of the games we can just purchase it directly through Steam, like Elden Ring, Stray. Oh, actually, all the titles that we mentioned here, they're available through Steam. And the Steam Deck is just phenomenal on this because it's one console to carry around, one console to worry about, and one cable basically to attach it to any TV. And that's huge, huge convenience when you have such a plethora of video games to select from on one device, as opposed to, I mean, realistically, I cannot have my therapist having an Xbox, a PS4, a Nintendo Switch on their car, and then mysteriously, all of them are broken. One device I can deal with, but three devices, and then there's also an advantage from a disability perspective to the Steam Deck because I can either have them use a keyboard, the layout of the buttons, or even a custom controller. It's just a lot easier to deal with the Steam Deck in that perspective because some children that have cerebral palsy, on the other hand, they might need a special keyboard or controller to interact with content. So your typical like PS5 controller, it's not practical for them. We can't use it. Keyboard is just really complicated, not as enjoyable, so they need something special. And they don't make those for every system. Yeah, they do have some, but you have a lot of more options. I just want to say you have a lot more options with a computer style Steam Deck, which is technically a computer, as opposed to something that's specifically made for the PS4. Because now this child doesn't like PS4 games. This child likes Nintendo games. And then they don't have that disability controller compatible with Nintendo and then Xbox. It can be a really tricky business.
So I was wondering, when will you be putting out more video game recommendations?
Oh, we have another list coming up, but before we publish, we always like to review it, make sure that this is fine and that we have seen good results for the intended purpose within our clinical setting. We just don't like to publish any games just because we read about it or anything like that. Our therapists have experience with the games and then they give us feedback and then we can put it all together, test it out ourselves, and see. Yeah, I can see why this aspect of this game, like taking turns, it's working. It's incorporated already into the game. So things like that, we just take our time. We don't want to give anyone false advice or false recommendations. Any other questions?
No.
All right. Thank you.